Worked with Scott probably 5 or 6 times now on a startup selling workshop, and when we wanted to do one here in Innogrove, he was the guy that we wanted to come here. So very happy to have Scott here, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about himself, including how he swam across Lake Tahoe this weekend.
Slowly, very slowly. Thank you very much, Laura and Steve and Faith. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I was telling Steve a little bit earlier today that I live out in Davis, California, and it's been really encouraging over the last few years, especially to see the up ramp or the upswing of places like Innogrove all throughout the Sacramento region. And so I think it's really encouraging that it gives opportunities to entrepreneurs like you guys to get out of the kitchen table, get into a space where you can be a little bit more creative, and start partnering and working with other people out there that have very like-minded like you. So it's really wonderful to see this kind of space available to you. So if Laura's here, the only sort of like biggest question I have is like, who's running Sacramento right now? Because if she's not on Twitter or Facebook or something, I feel like the whole infrastructure of Sacramento is going to break down.
I'll be on in a minute.
Yeah, I'm sure. Kevin Johnson's probably like freaking out right now. I have to do work now because Laura's busy. So before we get started, I want to ask you just a couple questions. And would that be okay?
Sure.
Cool. So by raising hands, how many of you right now are a startup CEO, you have a startup and it's your primary focus during the business day? Don't be shy. Yeah, one? Okay. So how many of you are either thinking about a startup or work at a startup and you're kind of like in that development stage, the idea stage? How many? Show of hands. Okay. Is that somebody calling in because they wanted to vote too? How many?
Some of the guys here are CEOs of their company, but they're not doing it full time yet.
Okay.
I noticed you didn't raise their hand
Yeah.
when you asked the first question.
Cool. Thank you. How many are here because they thought they were going to catch a Pokemon? No? Anybody? Just one? Okay, cool. It's over there. For those of you that are in the startup phase, whether you're this is a primary focus for you or it's a part-time endeavor that you're building up, how many of you have a product or a service that you are actively selling? Show of hands. You're actively out there trying to get people to pay you money for what you have. Cool. So how many of you are pre-product? You're doing market research, customer development. You've got an idea, but you haven't even started building product. Just one? Okay, what are the other people doing? Who didn't vote on that? Who did not raise a hand?
I was here for the beer.
Awesome. I'm always worried when they serve beer.
That's right.
Because I'm like, wow, I'm trying to get
We didn't have
Cool. No, that's really great. So what I'd like you to do first is everybody stand up and stand up. Put your shoulder on the person right next to you.
Put your hand on their shoulder.
Yeah, hand on the shoulder. Hand on the shoulder. Shake the person and say, "Oh shit, he's interactive."
Oh shit.
Okay, you sit back. So there's a lot of statistics out there about startups. What percentage of startups typically fail? 80? 100%. Yeah, I don't know the exact number. I've seen numbers. I've seen 75, I've seen 80, I've seen 90%. It's a lot. It's a lot of startups that fail. More interestingly, there's a company called CB Insights, and they did a study not about the number of startups that failed, but why did they fail? Why did they fail? And they went through really specific reasons. And the top 5 reasons. I'm going to tell you the top 5 reasons, according to CB Insights, why startups fail. Reason number 1, lack of market need for the product. That's number 1. Number 2 is lack of cash flow. Number 3 is poor team dynamics or poor team structure. Number 4 is competition. Number 5 is pricing strategies. Top 5 reasons, 4 out of those 5 are sales related. First one is lack of market for the product. Number 2 is what? Who wrote it down?
Lack of money.
Lack of cash. You solve when you have money coming in. Number 3 is poor team dynamics or poor team structure. And part of that is actually hiring bad salespeople. So you could argue even number 3 is somewhat related to sales. Number 4 is competition, clearly a sales problem. And number 5, what did we say number 5 was? Pricing strategies. Now, it doesn't mean that you didn't price low enough. It just meant your pricing strategies were off. Because it could be that maybe you priced too low relative to your cost or relative to what the market is willing to pay. It's not until you get to number 6 that the word product comes up. Number 6, reason number 6 is poor product. 4 of the top 5 are directly sales related. And that's exactly why I do what I do. Because to me, it's one thing to have a startup fail. It's another thing to fail simply because couldn't figure out how to sell the darn thing, right? Or even to know that there was a problem worth addressing with whatever it is that you built. So for those of you that are early enough that you haven't even started building your product, you're at a huge advantage because that means you get to assess the market needs first before you make that mistake of building and then hoping they come, or building and then trying to figure out where that product fits. Does that make sense so far? Mm-hmm. Cool. So a couple things about the talk tonight. One is that sometimes I talk really fast and sometimes I slow down a lot. So I speed up and I slow down. So if I speed up a little too fast, you need me to slow down, just tell me. If I'm a little bit too slow, just wait a second, I'll catch up to you. Okay. So that's the first thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention is we're obviously filming the session here. So, you know, act nice. So what we're going to cover today is focusing on really three parts of the sale. So the first part is focusing on I think of it as a big triangle. I like triangles because they're very strong structures. And there's kind of all 3 parts of the triangle are important for you to have a scalable, sustainable sales process. So the first part is focusing on prospecting and pipeline. Right, so just some quick terminology. What are we talking about when we say prospecting or prospects? What do we mean from a sales standpoint?
Identifying potential customers.
Say again?
Identifying potential customers.
Yeah, identifying potential customers, people who are interested potentially in buying your product, right? And once we have enough prospects, we put them in sales speak, we call it a sales pipeline. So sometimes you'll have somebody you had an initial conversation with, they're early in your pipeline. After you've had several conversations, you're close to a contract. That's where they're later in the pipeline. From a sales standpoint, we think about having prospects, putting them into pipeline. So that's one area that we're going to cover today. The second area that we're going to cover is how do we convert those prospects into paying customers? So that's what we're really want, right? We want the money. Because without paying customers, we don't have the cash flow. We don't have proof that we're solving a problem. The ultimate assessment as to whether or not you've built something useful is if somebody buys it. Buying something is the exchange of value. It's the only way we can identify whether or not value is being exchanged is if money is being exchanged, for the most part. And the third thing that we're going to cover is process. Meaning, how do you, as a startup, get to a point where you've got a flow of prospects, you've got a solid pipeline, they're converting to paying customers in a repeatable, scalable way. Does that make sense? So those are the 3 areas that we're going to cover. Prospects and pipeline, paying customers, building out our sales process. Cool? That's with me so far?
Yep.
All good? Okay, awesome. Just a little bit more about me before we kind of kick off. I've been the VP of sales at 3 different startups, all enterprise, so business to business is another way people think of enterprise. I've been in the ed tech space, fintech, so education technology, financial technology, data analytics space. And in all 3 of those startups, I was the first non-founder, the first salesperson, if you will. And in all 3 cases, we went from basically 0 revenue to the first couple $1 million in revenue. So getting from 0 to 1 is really hard, customers. Getting from 1 to 10 customers is really hard, and getting from 10 to 100 is really hard. Once you get to 100, you've got something, you've got a real process, you've got a real proof. Then it's just a matter of scaling the right way. So those are the 3 areas. Getting from 0 to 1 is the toughest. 1 to 10, also really hard. Getting from 10 to 100 is the next feat. Once you get there, you're off and running. And so I've mostly worked with the 3 startups I worked with is getting from, basically 0 to 100. in that area. After that, I got bored and went to the next startup. So, lastly, what I'll say is that I'm going to do the best I can to give you everything I have in the time that we've got. I expect you to ask questions. Like I said, it's interactive. This time is your time as much as it is me presenting. So if anything's unclear, if you have any questions, please let me know at the time. We can hash it out. And at the end, if for those of you who might want some additional help outside of the work that we're going to be doing today and tonight, then I'll show you how you can get some extra help. Would that be okay?
Yep.
Is that cool? All right. Ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Next slide.
What's that?
Next slide.
Next slide. Okay, here we go. I'm very high tech. Very high tech. Cool. All right. This is where it gets very sophisticated. So the good news is, to build out a repeatable, scalable sales process, we only have to answer 6 questions. How many? 6. How many? 6. Cool. So the first question that we want to answer is what? The question is what? Now, when I'm saying we have to answer the question what do I mean here? What's the very first question that we need to be able to answer when it comes to selling our product or building a sales process?
What are you
What
selling?
value?
What's
Like
the
what
problem?
value?
What's the problem? Who said it?
Oh, what's the problem?
What problem are you solving? That's why I love that CV Insights report so much, because the very first problem that they identified as the reason that startups fail is a lack of market for the product. 42% of companies fail for that reason alone. So it's a situation oftentimes where somebody has, hey, I've got this great idea for a product, I'm going to build it, and then I'm a hammer looking for a nail. Right? The challenge there is that customers don't care about your hammer. What they care about is their problem. So if we're able to identify really specifically and talk in terms of the customer's problem, then we're able to connect with them on their terms. So if we get this wrong, what we end up looking like is an amateur. Right? Have you ever been in a situation, you've talked to a customer or potential customer, or maybe you've been the customer and somebody's talking to you and all you hear is wah, 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 wah. Product does this, feature that, look at this, click here, check this out, download here. You're like, yeah, cool, but you're not addressing my problem here, right? So if instead we can talk to the customers about their problem in their terms, then we look like an expert. Then we look like an expert. Why is that important? Why is it important to look like an expert to your customers?
Trusted.
Credibility. You're trusted. Yeah? What's one way that you can show your expertise to your customer or your potential customer? Who here feels like they're an expert in their area?
Which question?
Either one. You pick one. Multiple choice.
No, it was by repeating back what they say they're looking for, kind of do active listening, making sure you are saying this is your problem,
Yeah.
and putting it back out there is one way to kind of instill confidence in.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to show some level of connection. How can you show expertise?
You have to be the industry expert or what you're trying to sell. In our case, we're in a real estate or
Okay.
rental industry. So in order to talk their language, you have to know their industry and you have to know what their problem is in order to...
You have to know their problem, and do they always know their problem?
They don't.
They don't always know their problem. That's where being an expert gives you huge leverage in the start of a sales conversation. Oftentimes, if you've done this right, you can have 2 or 3 conversations with your potential customer before you even show the product, because it's about their problem. So if you're able to bring insights, information, data, expertise, because you've got a certain perspective about a problem in the market, now they're willing to listen to you. As opposed to the person who sends 17 emails, can I show you a demo, can I show you a demo, can I show you a demo, when can I sign up for a demo? I didn't get a reply to your email yet, so I'm wondering, would you like to see a product demo yet? How many of you have gotten emails like that? You get an email like that from, you have like no idea how you showed up in these lists? I was searching LinkedIn and your profile came up and I thought you'd be a perfect fit to see our product demo. Click here to sign up for a 60-minute product demo. You're like, really? That sounds awesome. I can't think of a better way to spend the next 60 minutes of my life. Right? In my email, and I have Gmail, and I have a tag that I use whenever I get a couple of these emails every day. And the tag that I put to this email is called bad emails. It's probably the biggest folder in Gmail because I get these all the time. Okay. So what we want to do is reverse that. Before we talk about our product, we want to make sure that we're clear on the customer's problem and that they're clear on the customer problem. And that's where we have the opportunity as startup founders. You probably started your company or thinking about starting your company because you've seen a problem in the market that nobody else is addressing. And in some cases, it's a problem that you see, but not a lot of other people see it until you explain it to them. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're right, that is a big problem. Right? So the very first, and this is why I say this is the first question we need to answer is what problem are we solving? We cool? Clear?
Absolutely.
Cool. I've also taught at some universities, so and nighttime classes are always the toughest. So the next question we want to answer is who? What do you mean by who? What's the question here?
Who's your ideal customer?
Who's your ideal customer? What else? Tell me more about how you're defining customer.
Who has the problem?
What's that?
Who has the problem?
Who has the problem? What person or people within the organization have that problem? And also, what segments or industries have that problem as well? So who is actually kind of a two-pronged. So the first part of who is you can think of this in a number of different ways. What's the industry? What's the segment? What's the vertical? Where are you narrowing your focus so that when you talk about that problem, it's relevant to that industry? So I have a client right now who does custom software development.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. What the hell does that mean? Right? So we started unwinding. I'm like, well, Jack, tell me more about the projects you do. Well, we've done a lot of work in the transportation sector. We came up with this, and he talked about this project. I was like, okay, that's really cool. We did this other billing system for a dental company, multi-branch dental company. I'm like, okay, that's really cool. We've also done some things over here in healthcare. Solved a really big problem. Like, okay, that's really cool. Which one are you going to choose to focus on? Because when you're talking to the transportation guy, they don't care about the healthcare experience you have. They don't care about the experience that you had when you were working with any other industry. They care about your expertise in your area. So whether it's a service-based industry or a product-based industry, well, your grand vision might be, hey, we can sell this product to everybody has this problem, right? You got to focus in on a specific vertical industry segment. That's the first who. And the second who is the people, or who are the people in those organizations that have that problem. So the way I like to think about this on the who, come back to this. I have a 4-year-old, so I get to draw really basic pictures, and he thinks they're awesome. Do you know what this is?
It's awesome.
It's awesome. It's an office building. So the way I like to think about this, if I'm selling, and I've got this target customer within a certain segment, there's this company. Let's say it's Dignity Health. Okay? And I've decided, like, hey, healthcare and companies like Dignity Health, that segment of companies in terms of size and scope, that's the people, that's the target customer. I'm sitting here, I'm like, I have no idea where to start. What I have to imagine is that Dignity Health in the office building, if I could kind of take a lever and just crack it open and look inside, there's tens of thousands of people that work at Dignity Health. I've got to find a few of the people that actually have the problem that I solve, as well as the people that have budget to pay for it, authority to make the decision, the specific need, and a timeline in order to make that decision. So that's where the who part, first focusing in on some people think of it as a niche. I just think of it as taking a focus. Niche makes it feel really small, and that's okay. But however you define a vertical industry segment niche, once you've defined that niche, then the companies that you're selling to, you've got to go find the people that make the decisions and have that problem. Okay? So if we do this the wrong way, anybody familiar with the terminology spray and pray? My son's really good at this with the garden hose. He's going to water the plants and the fence and the house and the cats, right? So even if we know what problem we're solving, if we don't have that industry focus, and we don't know who it is specifically we're targeting, the senior vice president of operations at Dignity Health as our target customer, as our target prospect, then it just becomes spray and pray, and that's why you get the emails that you get. It's kind of like, I did a Google search for startup CEO, and your profile popped up. I thought you'd be great for my product. Okay. How many startup CEOs do you think show up when you go to LinkedIn and search? Millions? Not much of a segment, right? But if we do this right, then we can be really targeted. We can have a really specific target of who to go after. And so the combination of what problem we're solving and being the expert at helping customers understand their problem, define their problem, and then finding the right segments and the right people, when we put those two together, that's where we can start our real prospecting work. Right? And that's where we can start building a pipeline. Because if you're an amateur in terms of the problem, and you're just spraying and praying, you're never going to get results. Right? And if you do get results, the results you get are not going to be very good. Right? How are we doing so far? Is this cool? Helpful? Questions? Jeff is stroking his beard very thoughtfully.
Less a beard.
Less a
more
beard.
forget.
More of a beard than I will ever be able to grow. Look at these big open patches everywhere.
So what was the third question?
We haven't gotten to the third question.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's what problem are we solving? Who? Think of it as people and companies. Am I writing large enough? Do I need you guys? Okay. Yeah. Cool. Should we go on to the third question?
Yes.
All right. How many questions are there?
6.
Yes. Okay. So the next question we want to answer is why? What do we mean by why here? We've identified the problem. We've got our segment. We've got the people that we're targeting. What is the why?
Why us?
Why us? Close.
Why are they looking for a solution?
Why should I buy?
Why should I be?
Yeah. Why should I buy? What's the specific reason that when I make this purchase, I will be happy, or that I should make this purchase? So the challenge is, if we get this wrong, what ends up happening is we look like a cost. No budget. Sorry, looks cool, great product, no budget. Yes, we have this problem. Yep, I'm the decision maker. Can't buy it because we don't have a budget. But if we reverse that and we do it right, then our product or service looks like a return on investment. Right. Do you want to know the 4 reasons, and the only 4 reasons that companies make purchasing decisions? Would you like to know that?
Yeah.
Should I tell you now? So we've got these people in these companies. It's basically 4 and only 4 reasons that companies make decisions. First is they want to increase revenue. So think about your product, or the idea of your product, and when somebody uses your product, when they buy your product, will it help them directly increase revenue in their organization, in their company? So that's one reason companies helps the top line. Now the second reason, which is the opposite of this, which is it helps them to reduce cost. also monetary, but it helps them fix the bottom line.
Can you dive deep into that?
Sure.
I mean, I guess, can you give me a little more detail on
On the reduced cost.
yeah, it helps them reduce, the reason why they spend money, you're saying, is to help them reduce costs?
Yes.
Give me an example.
So an example would be we've hired 5 temp workers. We're paying all those temp workers $20 an hour to process paperwork. That's the job that we're paying them to do. Guess what? I have software that does all that stuff automatically. So instead of you having to pay 5 temp workers $20 an hour for 8 hours a day, you spend X dollars, which is less, and you wipe away all that cost.
Gotcha.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Any other questions on these two? The third reason companies buy is to increase efficiency. Makes their company run more smoothly. So if you think about it from a strategic standpoint, if you're a manager or an executive, you've hired a bunch of people, hopefully really smart, efficient people, and you bought a bunch of equipment, computers, manufacturing equipment, office buildings, company cars, cell phones. And you're hoping that the combination of really smart people with really good technology makes the operation run as efficiently as possible. Does that work that way? Heck no. Of course not. We know there's inefficiencies everywhere. So the idea of running at perfect efficiency is just an economic hypothesis. It never actually exists. So if your product helps to increase efficiency in an organization, then an executive's like, oh, I want that. So let me give you an example of that. So another client I work with, they do contract administration software. Super sexy. Like, man, I get to sell contract administration software. Well, it turns out in that part of the software world, there's not a whole lot of products that allow you to think of it as Google search your contracts. If you're a large company, especially a company that has a lot of intellectual property, you've got a lot of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, you've got a lot of sales contracts. A lot of times those contracts are PDFs or even faxes or pictures of faxes, PDFs of faxes, right? Which means that all of the information in those contracts is just locked up in a file. You can't actually search it. So one of the things they figured out is how to make that text searchable and put it into a platform. So instead of having thousands and thousands of documents sitting in a shared drive, that when the next customer needs a renewal, the salesperson has to remember that, go and look at that contract, remember, oh, this renewal is coming up. The annual renewal is coming up September 1st. I'm going to go find all my customers that have a renewal coming up September 1st. Or, hey, we have an SLA, a service level agreement of having 99.9% uptime, and we have some customers complaining. Is it 99.9% for that customer, or do we negotiate it and it's actually 99% for them? Right, so you can imagine sorting through thousands and thousands of PDFs and scanned images, huge problem. So their product solves that problem. So roughly you could say, well, it's cost-based because it's going to save time, which is money, but really it's efficiency. Because if I'm a salesperson, maybe every month I can quickly go search for all my renewal dates and then know I got to call these 8 customers because the renewal is coming up in a month. Right, so that's an example of efficiency. Does that make sense?
I had the question, but you already answered it.
Yeah.
It's really cost, right? Because
Yeah, these two are really closely aligned. Sometimes it's much more tangible
On the
cost
side.
structure if you're like removing people or removing raw materials, for example, or a certain manufacturing process you can skip. Like, oh, we put these two materials together in-house, but we can outsource it, and it reduces our costs because we're just getting it. Yeah, but yeah, intuitively, you're absolutely right. And then the fourth reason is to reduce risk. Reduce risk. So what do you mean by that? What's an example of reducing risk?
If you pre-screen tenants in our industry, then you are in a lower risk of eventually evicting them.
Yeah.
So that's a reduced risk.
Yeah, and the risk there is lawsuits,
Yep.
headline risk. Such and such company evicts
Mhm.
X% of their renters every month. So that's a really great example of risk. In most industries now, especially like healthcare, telecommunications, finance, tons and tons of regulations layered over top. So like in Sacramento, we got just absolutely plowed by the mortgage crisis about 10 years ago. I believe it's been almost 10 years. And so then there's all these layers of regulations and oversight. And so if you're a mortgage company and you're trying to make sure that going forward, when we lend money, we're doing it the right way, tons and tons of risk there.